The Generation 1 and 2 Pokemon games were not just cultural phenomena, but also huge successes on a financial and critical level. However, by the time Gen 3 rolled around, the fad was mostly over, and Pokemon turned into just another popular game franchise to many. Because of this, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald are what I consider as the great filter of Pokemon fans. 99% of the fans who stuck around for Gen 3 and onwards are true fans of the series, while anyone who only played Gen 1 and 2 are normies whose favorite Pokemon is Mewtwo. Did this drop-off occur because the bandwagoners got tired of the Pokemon fad, or maybe they had a more justified reason for not buying Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire? Today, I'm going to try and answer this question by reviewing these games and figuring out how they compare and contrast to their more popular predecessors. Before we get into the meat of this video, let's go ahead and get a basic outline of your typical Gen 3 playthrough by doing a quick recap of my personal journey through the Hoenn region. Quick disclaimer that I played through Emerald, so just keep in mind that Ruby and Sapphire will have slightly different plot points. I start off by arriving at our mom's new house in Littleroot via the back of the moving truck. I proceed to immediately save Professor Birch by using my starter, Trico, who I named Quetzal, based on Quetzalcoatl from Aztec mythology. Then I use that gift to beat up his daughter, May. After that, he further rewards me by giving me a Pokedex. We run into Wally's bitch ass, who carries a Ralts, and gives us the catching tutorial. We meet and fight Team Aqua in Petalburg Woods before fighting Roxanne's gym with Quetzal. In Rusturf, we catch a Whimsir that I named Vineboom, because, funny noise. With the power of Vineboom and Quetzal, we beat Team Aqua, retrieve the MacGuffin, and save Pico. After taking a boat ride to Dewford, I catch an Aeron named Tyrone, and beat Brawly after way too many attempts. Then we take another boat ride to Slateport, where we deliver the MacGuffin, and beat May on our 5th try. Next, I went into Mauville, beat Wally mercilessly in front of his uncle, defeated Watson, then left Mauville and moved on to Falaport Town. On the way to Meteor Falls, I caught my Swablu and begrudgingly named her Kevin based on my friend's suggestion. In Meteor Falls, nice guy Archie warns us about Team Magma, and we head off to Mount Chimney to stop them. After beating Maxie, nice guy Archie thanks us, and we proceed into Lava Ridge Town to face off against Flannery, whom we defeat with ease. Circling back to Petalburg, I beat my dad with Tyrone. Then I caught a Corphish and a Shuppet, naming them Xerxes and Yu respectively. Eventually, we get to Winona. Eventually, we get to Winona and kick her ass. After clearing through Aqua Grunts and Mount Pyre, I went back to Mount Chimney to retrieve the Blue Orb from Team Magma, who awakened Groudon. Then, I get sidetracked in Moss Deep, beating Lizentate. We then finally track down Team Aqua at the Seafloor Cavern, who awakened Kyogre. Kyogre and Groudon proceed to have a temper tantrum, so we go to the Sky Pillar and awaken the babysitter, Fug, to save the day. Then, we beat Juan, like the world wasn't just in peril a second ago. Finally, we make it to Victory Road, where Wally shows up out of nowhere just to get his ass handed to him. After a frustrating Victory Road, I entered the Elite Four, and here's how that went. Sydney was pretty easy. Lorelei gave me problems, but my team pulled through. Glacia was a breeze thanks to Ice not being a good defensive type. Drake was actually pretty tough, but Exploud is an overleveled beast who fucked him up. At last, I fought Wallace, whom I set up 6 dragon dances on with Kevin and O-code everything he sent out. With that, Emerald was completed, and now I have all the experience needed to give a fair review of these games. As always, this is the scoring system I'll be using, and I suggest you watch my previous videos to see exactly how it works. On top of all of the basic aspects of Pokemon gameplay from the last generations, we have some improvements introduced in this one. Firstly, let's go over the additions to the battling system, since I think Pokemon battling is the most important aspect of any Pokemon game. Double battles are this generation's biggest feature, and you can tell because they put them around every corner of Hoenn. Basically, instead of a 1v1 Pokemon battle, it's a 2v2, which is a pretty simple concept, right? Well, for most people, yes, but for competitive Pokemon players, this completely changes the game. Double battles practically require completely new teams and movesets to be created around the rules of the game. Players now have to be mindful of twice as many Pokemon on the field, twice as many moves being used in a turn, and twice as many targets to choose to attack. This seemingly simple feature adds a completely new dimension to Pokemon battling, and is overall a great addition because of that. Keeping in the theme of competitive play, everything else Game Freak implemented in this department was a positive change. Every Pokemon now has an ability, and these can make or break a Pokemon's viability. The best example I can think of off the top of my head is Electros with Levitate, which makes it so that it has no weaknesses. On top of abilities, each new Pokemon now also has a nature. Natures are kind of complicated to explain, and the most simple explanation I can think of is this handy chart. As you can see, there are a total of 25 natures. Each one boosts one stat while weakening another. Sometimes a nature can boost and weaken the same stat, and does nothing. However, most of the time, they can provide a strategic advantage if paired with the right Pokemon. For instance, Toxapex's best stat is defense, with special defense in a close second. If someone wanted to make the special and physical defense stats even, what they could do is find a Toxapex with a sassy nature to boost special defense. While this would lower its speed, it's a good trade-off, since Toxapex already has an awful speed stat and will most likely never get the first attack off regardless of its nature. Natures are another important part of the metagame, and overall a good addition in terms of strategy and competitive battling. Despite all of this, the physical special split still hasn't happened yet, and it's very noticeable after you've played any Pokemon game from Gen 4 onwards. Also, I realize I haven't actually explained what that is, so here's a Bulbapedia article that sums it up pretty well. Anyway, I can't take off too many points because of that, but it's still an annoying part of old Pokemon that really affected the gameplay in certain cases. Speaking of things that didn't change, poison still affects Pokemon while walking around in the overworld, and I think we can all agree that this is an unnecessary pain in the ass. The bag also still has limited space. Granted, it's a lot more space than in previous games, but you'd think that this wouldn't be an issue at this point. Continuing my complaints, I just want to talk about how awful the Ruby and Sapphire fishing mechanics are. They're so bad that I can't even explain what's wrong with them because I barely understand how it even works. But if you've ever fished in Generation 3, then you know what I'm talking about. This problem is compounded by the fact that certain Pokemon can only be found using this shitty mechanic. Alright, this next one isn't a Ruby or Sapphire specific problem, but it's still an issue, and I'm gonna use this opportunity to discuss why. I'm of course talking about HMs. In theory, these are a good idea. They prevent players from progressing past a certain point until the game wants them to, but they can also be used to have blocked areas in early parts of the game that can later be used as a shortcut or as a secret or extra area to explore. However, since it's a move that has to be used by a Pokemon, the whole system is frustrating and flawed. There are two options you have with how to handle HMs. Option A is to waste a team slot on an HM slave, which makes it so that in key parts of the game, like Victory Road, you don't have your full team. Option B is to waste key move slots on your Pokemon to the point where having a competitive moveset is impossible. This is once again a problem when facing those tough late game battles. Neither option is optimal, and both make the overall gameplay more irritating. Now, there are ways that Game Freak could have fixed this problem. Why not have every HM be somewhat good like Strength and Surfar? Maybe make it so that a wider range of Pokemon are able to learn these HMs, so that I'm not forced to have 2 extra water moves on my Crawdaunt that are unnecessary because I already have Surf. Why not have no HMs at all, and replace them with a more fun and engaging feature that does the exact same thing? Shout out to Sun and Moon, God bless those games. This problem gets amplified the more HMs you add, and oh my fuck does Game Freak love adding these things. This all comes to a crescendo in Gen 4's Victory Road, which I'll rant about another day. The reason I'm saying all this is so that when I mention HMs anytime throughout these reviews, you'll know exactly what my problems with them are. Now, with that out of the way, I'm going to list off all the parts of Ruby and Sapphire that HMs affect. It ruins Victory Road, it ruins the Elite Four, and any other difficult battles. It ruins... Actually, that's about it. But those two are big ones, because you're leaving a bad taste in my mouth by having the finale of the game be fucked up. In summary, HMs are frustrating, and this game adds more of them, so this section loses some points. Speaking of HMs, Dive would be a cool mechanic if it weren't one. Rounding out my complaints, I want to say that the grinding you have to do in Ruby and Sapphire before the Elite Four is a pain in the ass and really tedious, but it's an improvement over Gold and Silver, which really says more about those games than anything. Okay, to end on a good note, I really like the puzzles in Gen 3. They're nothing groundbreaking, and some are just glorified mazes, but that is not at all a bad thing. They're simple but fun. especially the gym puzzles. Liz and Tate's gym in particular was really clever and engaging, which I don't think I can really say about any of the gyms in Gen 1 and 2. There's one puzzle I didn't enjoy, and funnily enough, it's because it's ruined by HMs. What I'm referring to is this one strength puzzle on Victory Road that you have to do entirely in the fucking dark unless you have Flash. Because I don't want to put Flash on any of my Pokemon, this makes the entire section complete bullshit, and I would have been there for hours if I didn't just look up what to do. Alright, I've spent way too long in the gameplay section at this point, so I'm giving it a 75 out of 100. Let's move on. I'm gonna cut right to the chase. Gen 3 might have one of the best Pokédex rosters in all of Pokemon. Of course, things like design can be really subjective, so this section might be a little skewed based on my personal preferences. With that said, this is my video, so I'll say what I think, and I think Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald introduced so many great new Pokemon. Gardevoir, Flygon, Metagross, Mudkip, Absol, Altaria, Sharpedo, the list goes on. And while it is true that every generation has their fair share of standout Pokemon, I think that Ruby and Sapphire is really defined by the weaker parts of its Pokédex. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of Pokemon games end up having really hit or miss designs, but I think that Ruby and Sapphire's misses are more forgettable than anything. Other games have a few butt-ugly outcasts that everyone constantly points to as shitmons, but Ruby and Sapphire's worst Pokemon aren't often the butt of many jokes. There are, of course, exceptions, but the good far outweighs the bad here. Alright, let's see what's next. Oh, in my notes here, I wrote, Rant about Pikachu clones. Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint past Carter, so let's do just that. Plusle and Minun are introduced in Gen 3 as the first of many Pikachu clones. Pikachu clones are the cutesy, electric rodent Pokemon that every generation after this one loves to include. They're awful. They're useless. They're annoying. They're blatantly unoriginal, and Game Freak doesn't know how to stop making them. And I may or may not have a personal vendetta against them. Actually, now that I think about it, this isn't really going to affect the score in any meaningful way. I think I just wanted to rant about something tangentially related to Gen 3. Getting back on topic, the only big downside of the new Pokemon in Ruby and Sapphire is that they introduce more baby Pokemon. My only comment about this is just, why? Because they're horrible and useless, that's why not! Pokémon Selection gets a 75 out of 90. I've already talked about abilities and natures and why they're good features, so they'll earn some points for this category as well. However, Generation 3 also introduces a grand total of 103 new moves. The new moves are an overall positive for the game, and add an extra bit of variety to the movesets of Pokemon. Dragon Dance, Calm Mind, Hail, Knockoff, Taunt, and Will-O-Wisp are some notable examples. Now, let's talk about the biggest feature in Generation 3. I'm talking about the running shoes, baby! Fuck yeah! Finally, players no longer have to open up a tedious series of menus just to ride the bike and go faster than the pace of an obese woman on a scooter in Walmart. But in all seriousness, having a convenient and quick way to get around the map is an amazing change. While the walking speed was usually too slow and the bike speed was a bit too fast in certain cases, the running speed is a comfortable in-between that really should have been there since Red and Blue. I think that's all the important additions, so now I'll mention some other, smaller features I liked. The battle tent is kind of a neat idea. It's just an arbitrary extra thing to do that's good for post-game and replayability. Secret bases are things, once again, a neat idea, and good for post-game. And I think that's about it for the new additions. Overall, pretty much everything here was positive, so I'll be giving this section a score of 75 out of 80. It barely loses those last 5 points because this game adds new HMs. Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald mark the beginning of Pokemon plotlines gradually becoming more in-depth. I pretty much already went over the story of this game in my recap section, so I'll just talk about the good and bad. Through my years of internet discourse, I've heard many people say that they prefer the simple stories of Gen 1 and 2 over something like Gen 7, which is very plot-heavy. Generation 3 is somewhere in between those two extremes. You have simple characters like in Red and Blue, but also have a grand plot and deeper lore like in Sun and Moon. This combination comes together to create a rather silly story. Basically, Archie and Maxie want to remove all land and water from Earth respectively. which is the most comically absurd motivation ever, and I don't have to explain why. It doesn't help that this ridiculous plot point is the backbone of Ruby and Sapphire's plot. It makes no sense, but it's kind of charming in that way. I mean, clearly Game Freak didn't want us taking it seriously, so why should we? If we look at this like it's some sort of Saturday morning cartoon, then Archie and Maxie's antics actually become quite comical. Then again, the game does treat the whole apocalyptic threat pretty seriously at the climax of the story. Speaking of the climax, does anyone else find it anticlimactic? I mean, there's this huge cutscene and build-up with Rayquaza, only for Groudon and Kyogre to just piss off without a fight. Actually, that is a bit funny now that I think about it. Other than the story, the characters are pretty alright. Very simple cardboard cutouts, but still alright. Ironically, Archie and Maxie end up being, in my opinion, the best characters just due to how comically dumb they are. There's not much else to say, so I'm giving this section a 40 out of 70. It's a bad mix of both simple and complicated storytelling elements, and its only standout trait is how dumb it truly is. The Hoenn region is pretty good. Despite the climate ranging from tropical to scolding, there's a surprising amount of diversity in terms of locations. The routes all stand out from each other for the most part, and there are some really unique areas such as Mount Chimney and Fort Tree City. Okay, now to address the elephant in the room. Too much water. Actually, the water routes themselves aren't the problem. They provide fun areas such as underwater caverns and floating towns, and fit well within the archipelago that is Hoenn. However, the abundant water routes create an issue. If Game Freak wants to make water and cave routes a big part of the region, that's fine, but it becomes a problem when every tile in those routes has random encounters. Constant wild Pokemon appearing while you're trying to do puzzles and fight grunts interrupts the flow of gameplay a lot. In fact, this isn't even a problem exclusive to water since caves are the same way. I genuinely don't understand why they do this because there are definitely ways to make it so that not all tiles in these areas have wild Pokemon. In places such as Victory Road and Route 132, where you're also trying to solve puzzles, the problem becomes so much worse. Also, before I get any smartasses in the comments, repel shouldn't be needed to have enjoyable and non-monotonous gameplay. Just make the water and stone tiles have different textures based on if Pokemon can be encountered there or not. It can't be that fucking difficult. I'll cut the rant there and finish up by giving the region a 50 out of 60. Not bad, and pretty memorable, despite there being a few frustrating areas. The music is good. Pokemon music is just good in general. The battle music is iconic, and the GBA sounds way better than the Game Boy. Also, everything sounds like a trumpet, so that's fun. With that, I see no reason to not give the music a perfect score of 50 out of 50.
The giant enemy spider.
I don't know where else to put this, but I wrote down here in my notes, what the fuck does mail do? And I really have no idea if anyone in the history of Pokemon has ever used mail. Okay, I'll stop fucking around and get to the important shit. Firstly, the graphics. This is the first Pokemon game that I can proudly say holds up visually. The colors look vibrant and bring everything to life, the animations are fluid, and there's a lot of nice small GUI changes. With that being said, it's still not perfect. Some sprites look way different in the overworld than they do in battle, and the sprites in battle aren't animated yet. However, those are small things that I'm not going to be too critical on. Oh, and one other thing, Magnemite's entrance animation is perfect. Next I'll talk about the post-game, except I didn't play the post-game because I'm a busy guy and I've got shit to do, so I once again recruited my friend to give me their synopsis. I'll paraphrase what they said here. In Pokemon Emerald's post-game, there's a bunch of small extra things to do across the region. You can enter contests, play in the battle tents, catch legendaries and mythicals, rematch trainers such as Wally, and even fight Steven Stone, which is like the red of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. But by far the biggest part of the post-game for Hoenn is the battle frontier. It has challenging battles like is to be expected with these types of post-game battling facilities, but it has more than just that. There are separate parts of the battle frontier, all for different types of challenges both within Pokemon battles and in between them. It has a lot of variety in what you can do, and makes for a great post-game because of how long it will take you to complete all of it. Even after you complete all of it, many will still want to keep coming back simply because it's fun. Overall, it's a good post-game with lots to do, and most of it is pretty fun and engaging. That about does it for this section. I'll give it a near perfect score of 45 out of 50. So with all these categories now graded, Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald earned a total of 410 out of 500 points, or if we were grading this like a test, a very respectable 82%. These games are a massive step forward for the future of the franchise, and it is a damn shame that most people still like to think that Pokemon cuts off after Gold and Silver. Literally every area, besides the bland story that literally makes no sense, has been improved on. There's a wider and more diverse Pokemon selection. There's an expansive and actually engaging post-game. There's graphics and music that hold up to today's standards. These games are obviously still missing a lot and making many mistakes of early Pokemon, but it's still a huge improvement over its predecessors, and I'd much sooner replay Emerald over Gold and Silver. With my third review all but finished, we are seeing a trend of constant improvement and innovation with each new installment. Will this incline of quality for the franchise continue? Find out next time I get off my ass and make one of these when we review. Oh, fuck me, not you. Alright, guess I'll give these games another shot.